everybody. Welcome to today's live stream. I didn't call this one a Q&A, but you can absolutely ask questions. So if you have questions, just let me know. So yeah, did you check out today's training? So I did a training today on how to handle backstory in your novel. So really important thing, because if you're not handling backstory properly, it's going to be really annoying to your reader, and you don't want that. So handle backstory. And I'll put a link in the comments to the video, the training, after this. But if you want to check it out right now, you can go on my Facebook page below and check it out. And I'm just pulling up my notes for our live right now. I'm giving everybody a couple of seconds to join. So how's it going? This is the second day of the training. So the first day we did a training on dialogue and how to write better dialogue. Cool. Hey guys, if anyone wants to say hi, I see a bunch of you are on. If you want to comment and say hi, that would be awesome. And also there's a PDF that goes along with the training. So if you haven't checked any of that out yet, I would highly recommend that you do, because that's just going to help reiterate all of this. And I'm going to go over right now the whole idea of backstory. So how to do backstory properly in a novel. Hear my dog barking in the background. He's very excited about backstory. But yeah, okay, so we're going to go over the checklist for what you should do with backstory in your actual novel. Like I said, this is just sort of a reiteration of some of the training that I did a full training on earlier, and there's also a PDF that goes with it so that you can follow along and, have a checklist to use for when you're working on your own stories. But just to talk you through some of the most important things about backstory, and then if you have questions, just put them in the comments and let me know. Okay, so what is backstory? So backstory is going to be the history or the things that happen to your character or characters in your novel before the story begins. So all the backstory is stuff that's happened to them previous to the story that you're writing. So anything that happens in the story is not backstory, it's the current story, and anything that happened before is your backstory. Now, obviously, people in general and characters as well have a huge history, backstory. And so for that reason, we have to be really, really discerning about what we put in the story as actual backstory and what we leave out, because it doesn't actually matter. So you as the author should know, but the reader does not need to know everything. So really, really key thing to keep in mind, because I see a lot of stories from writers and we'll just get pages and pages of info dumping of backstory, and it's a huge problem because that's not how you handle backstory. So a lot of times writers, I find, are placing way too much importance on the things that happened to the character previously, but a lot of it doesn't actually tie into the current story. So we're going to go over some of the most important points of writing backstory. And like I said, if you have questions, just let me know. So the very first thing with backstory is to be concise and to the point. No one wants to read 3 pages, 5 pages, 10 pages of someone's backstory. It's boring and unnecessary, and it really just pulls the reader out of the actual story. So don't do that, because it becomes a distraction, and a bad one. And a bad distraction is not good, because that means the person's probably going to put the book down and walk away and go do something else. And you don't want that. You want them to keep reading and want to keep reading. So don't give them a ton of backstory. Backstory should be short, sweet, to the point, the bare minimum, etc. Now, you also want it to be the right amount for the scene. So some scenes don't require any backstory. Sometimes the scene is just, this is what's happening now. We don't need to know anything from the past. Nothing is required. So in those scenes, no backstory. Don't give us any. We don't want to see it. Keep it away from us. Now, in the scenes that do require some backstory, so maybe a character references something that's needed and important in the story, but in order for it to make sense going forward, you have to know a little bit of the history, or you have to know a little bit of what that means. That's where you would insert some backstory. But it would just be a little bit, and it would just be the right amount for that scene. You're not going to just dump a bunch of backstory because you think, oh my God, I have to tell the readers all this stuff and put it in there. Because that, again, is distracting, it's unnecessary, and it's just going to make your reader pulled out of your story, which you definitely don't want. Now, the other thing with backstory is that it should stick to the information that's actually related to what's happening in the current story or going to happen going forward. And I gave 2 examples of this in the training. So like I said, be sure to check that out. And I'll put the links in the comments after the video. But in the training, I gave you one sample of a scene excerpt where there's a ton of backstory dropped in, just unnecessary backstory, long paragraphs of backstory. And then I gave you one where it was short and sweet, to the point, and the example just showed you that the information that you give as a backstory should always and only be something that moves the story forward. That has to be there, because if it's not there, the reader is not going to understand something, or something that happens later isn't going to be clear. So in that case, the backstory is required. But what you don't want is to just throw backstory in because you're trying to fill space, add extra word count, because you think your reader will be interested in the history of whatever's going on. People do not buy novels to learn about history. If they want to learn about history, they go get a nonfiction history book. If they want to learn about, history with a story, that's why they go to novels. But the novel, its job is not to give us history lessons. That's not the goal of a novel. That's not the job of it. The job of a novel is to bring a story to life. It's to show us what's needed in order for it to be, actually matter to the story. And that's it, just the bare minimum stuff. So stick to the information that's related to what's actually going on in the story. So we don't need to see backstory of, what they ate for dinner last week and what they wear and, who they went to high school with. None of that matters unless the scene is a high school reunion and, the antagonist is someone from high school who got bullied, who's killing everybody, and now we need to know that backstory so that we understand what's going on. In that case, then it would matter. So you really have to look at each scene individually and ask yourself, is there any backstory that needs to be here? Is there too much backstory? So maybe you've just got more stuff than that needs to be there. So super important to keep in mind, again, because too much backstory will pull the reader out of the actual story. Okay. And then other stuff on the checklist for backstory is that it always should move the story forward. So you don't want it to just be there just to give us information, but it should be something that hints at something that's coming, that foreshadows something that needed to be told to the reader, that adds something to the story that basically allows them to connect pieces that they couldn't have connected without that information. If they can connect the pieces without it, then we don't need it. You leave it out. So that's how I like to look at backstory is this actually needed? How does it move the story forward? In the example that I gave in my training, that one actually foreshadowed the entire plot of the book for the most part. So it foreshadowed something really small that ends up blowing up later in the story and being a huge piece. And so it was setting that up. And so, of course, it was needed, but all this other information that was in the first example was not needed because none of that did anything for the story. Now, you want your backstory to be spread out throughout the story. So you think of it like sprinkling it in versus just dumping it all out in one section. So I see this a lot in people's drafts is they will write a novel and then they'll have a scene where they think, oh, I have to get this backstory in real quick. And then they just dump a bunch of backstory in. So it's like just pages of backstory. 3-5 pages and over information we just don't need to know. And so think about if there is stuff we need to know. So maybe you've got like 5 little pieces of backstory that need to be there. Well, don't give it to us all at once because it's just too much and it becomes an info dump. So what we want is a sprinkle of it here, a sprinkle of it here, a sprinkle of it there. So it's literally just looking at the scene, putting a little bit of the backstory in, like what actually has to be there at that point, leaving the rest for later on where you can sort of unfold it a little at a time. And really that helps with the pacing of the story because if you're giving us little setup and hints of stuff through the backstory that's being shared, but you're not giving us the full picture yet, and as we read the story, we start to get the full picture, the full backstory starts to unfold, suddenly it all starts to make sense, and it becomes one cohesive story. So an example of a movie that, does this really well is, oh my God, what's it called? There's so many that do this really well, obviously. I'm just trying to think of an example that a lot of people would have seen. Well, anyway, the name isn't coming to me, but it's a Quentin Tarantino film that's told in like totally different order than how a story would normally go. So I'm going to look up the name because it's going to drive me nuts now. Let's see what it's called. Pulp Fiction. So if you've ever seen Pulp Fiction, you see that we get backstory, we get a lot of information, but it's not even told in the same order. So it's like all over the place. So the actual story unfolds a little bit at a time as we're going through the story. And so we're getting the entire picture, but we're not getting it all at one time. So it would have been a terrible story if he just dumped all of the information all in the beginning of the story and then try to let the rest play out. Like, that's boring. It's just too much, and it's overwhelming to a reader or a viewer. So sprinkle it a little at a time. Sprinkle it, sprinkle it. Now, again, the backstory is for anything that needs to be there for the story to make sense, to set up what's coming, to foreshadow things. So you want to make sure everything is cohesive and that it fits. You don't want things that are random. You don't want bits and pieces that don't add up to anything. So if you are putting backstory in, it's because it adds up to something later. So in my example that I shared in the training, the example was the girl and her friend were having a conversation, and the friend mentioned that this guy she's dating looks like this guy from high school. And the girl laughs, haha, whatever. I don't see it. Like, I don't see the resemblance. And she goes into a couple of sentences of backstory there, talking about the situation with this guy, letting the reader basically know who this guy was that she was talking about. Simple little thing. It's like a paragraph and a half total of the entire conversation and the backstory. But that little thing sets up what's coming later, which is that the guy that she's dating is actually the guy from high school. She just didn't know because he had a different name. He looked different to her. She didn't see the resemblance. So it brings a whole new version to the story once that happens, and a whole new piece of the antagonist to the story. So it was needed to set that up. So think about that with your backstory as well. Do you have... I have my iPad here. I've got some weird lighting going on. Like, makes you look all zombie. But yeah, so basically it's just making sure that it's important to the story, that it adds something that moves it forward, hints at something, foreshadows something. And then the final thing is, which actually Heather just mentioned in the comments here, which I'm going to read in a second, is that the backstory for your characters and the rest of your story should always be 100% known by you, the author, but your reader should only get 10% or less of it. So that means the iceberg principle, which Larry Brooks, my mentor and the author of Story Engineering, talks about, which Heather mentioned in the comment here. The iceberg principle is, and if you think about an iceberg, you see, a big chunk of it up above the water, right? So that's your 10%. That's your backstory 10%. What we're not seeing is all the ice underneath the water, where the rest of the iceberg. So most of the iceberg is actually under the water, and we're not seeing it at surface level. So that's like backstory. Backstory, you, the author, should know the entire backstory of every character, of everything. But your reader only gets to see that what's at the surface, that 10% and nothing else, because anything more than that is too much and unnecessary. And so Heather's saying the iceberg method, what the writer knows to build the world is so much greater and deeper than what the reader needs to know to enjoy the story. Exactly. And I think a lot of times we tell ourselves like, oh, the reader wants to know all this backstory. They want to learn the history of the characters. Readers really don't, though. It's not even that. It's not about, yeah, maybe they like the characters. Maybe they're, excited about it. But if it doesn't actually tie into the story, and it's not important to understanding the story for it to actually be cohesive and flow and make sense and be awesome, then the reader really doesn't care about it. So something that I suggest writers do with extra backstory, so let's say you wrote a bunch of backstory, but you're not using it, use it for marketing purposes. So when the book comes out, when it's published, or when after it's out, you could do one of two things. So one, you could offer it as a freebie to get people to opt in to just have them on your email list. So it's like if people purchase your book and they read it, you can put a note in there that says, hey, if you want to learn more about these characters, if you want to see, a short story that I wrote based on the backstory of them or something, go here and sign up to get the freebie. So they go and sign up to get it. Now you've got an email list of your readers. So that's one way to use extra stuff you have that you haven't actually done anything with in the story. Or you do the other version, which is you use it to entice people to be interested in actually reading and buying the story. So you take the backstory, you maybe write it into a short story or something, and then you offer it as a freebie opt-in for your email list so that when people sign up, they get it. And then from there, it's, hey, if you really liked this short story, well, guess what? I wrote a whole novel where this story actually plays out and you get to see way more of this character. So go check it out here. So I like to think of anything you do for your story and planning and development as this is just extra stuff that you could use for something else, for marketing stuff, or just extra content for your blog or for your website, especially when you're promoting your book coming out or when the book is out and you're continuing the marketing of it. I think it helps to have just extra content. And think about it like a DVD. This is how I like to look at it. DVDs, you've got the movie, And then you've got all these extras that come with the DVD, which is, deleted scenes and interviews with the cast and, a director's cut where they actually play the whole movie and the director talks through it and tells you all the ideas and things that they came up with and how they did it. So it becomes like a commentary. Like, that stuff is interesting. And some people actually watch the DVD extras every time they watch a movie. So they want to see the extras. They want to see what's on here. What did they think about it and what they come up with and how they do this and all these things. So think about that as extra. But imagine if they had taken all of that crap, the deleted scenes, the things that didn't really work, and they stuck it in the actual story. It would ruin it. It would make it terrible. But that doesn't mean those pieces are not important still, that they're not usable. It's just they're not usable in the novel. So very, very important thing to keep in mind, because I just see so many writers stuffing their stories with stuff that doesn't need to be there because they love a scene. They think it's so great, or they love a character's backstory and they think, oh, this needs to be here, but it doesn't work. So you have to see your novel as a separate entity to all of the other stuff you've come up with your planning and development. So it's, okay, I did all this planning and development. Now I've got, a story plan and I know what the backstory is and all of this stuff. But then from there, you take those pieces and you use what actually works and is cohesive in the story, and you leave everything else out. And this is, it's something you have to learn. So it's definitely, a writer has to learn how to discern what's important and what's not. And it does take time. But the more you do this, the better you'll get at it. So I hope this was helpful. I hope this gave you a good overview of backstory and how to use it in your novel. Like I said, I did a much deeper dive training on this that was free, completely free. You can get it right now on my Facebook page, or I'm going to put the link in the comments once this video is over, so you can come back and check it out there as well. If anyone has questions, let me know. If you're watching it as a replay, feel free to put questions in as well, because I'll totally answer them later on. If you want to share backstories, you can release them as a small ebook. Exactly. Yeah. And that's exactly what I was saying, is that you can do something with all that stuff. So you don't have to lose it just because it doesn't go into the novel, but you also don't want to stuff it into the novel because you don't want to lose it. So yeah, that is my tips for you on backstory. I hope it's helpful. I will put the link to the training in the comments, so check that out if you haven't already. And get ready, because if you love this storytelling stuff and you want to learn more, I have a workshop starting January 29th called Write Your Damn Novel. It is my third time running this workshop, but I've actually run multiple iterations of it over the last 7 years, and this is the best version I've ever come up with. So I'm very excited to invite new students in to take part in it and to learn how to actually develop an idea into a real story and not have an episodic narrative. So you can get on the wait list to learn more about this at bit.ly/writeyourdamnnovel. And stay tuned to my Facebook page, because I have one more training video coming out tomorrow all about episodic narrative and how to make sure you don't write one. So I will catch you guys next time, and get to the backstory training if you haven't yet. See ya.